So let's go ahead and let's go over to this really quick. Let's talk about what this is to begin with. All right. So what is DoD Directive 5240.01? Now, look, it is a policy directive outlining how the Department of Defense conducts intelligence activities and provides support to law enforcement. All right, my personal opinion. We're going to dive deep into whether that should even be a thing. Okay, but let's talk about it. So, the purpose is to guide intelligence-related operations and support to civilian authorities while maintaining legal constraints. So, I saw a lot of YouTubers out there. A lot of them. You guys watch the same channels I do. I can look at the stats and see what channels you guys watch compared to like my channel. And it's all the same ones. And a lot of them are putting out content with titles that say, did the military just authorize deadly force on civilians in the United States? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through this order with me, and we're going to look for ourselves. All right. So what are these DoD directives? What are DoD directives specifically? They're internal documents that set policy for military operations and procedures, ensuring that actions align with the law. Now, they have the authority within the military, but are subject to legal boundaries like the Posse Comitatus Act. We're going to talk more about the Posse Comitatus Act because the first thing I thought when I read the title this morning, when I had my cup of coffee and I was reading this, the first thing I thought was, I think this violates the Posse Comitatus Act. And I read through all of this and then read Posse Comitatus Act again, because we are all taught the Posse Comitatus Act in the police academy, and I have taught it to others for decades. I wanted to go back and read it because I'm like, maybe they changed something. They haven't changed anything. All right, so let's talk about this in particular. Why should we be concerned? Well, when you go through the table of contents, it's a typical government memo. You got your general issuance information, responsibilities, who's responsible for what. But we need to go down to 3.3A, levels of authority. That was the one I went to first because I want to read exactly what they're looking at here. So when you go to levels of authority, keep going down to section 2, drop down to section C. This is the part that freaks me out. Assistance in responding with assets with potential for lethality or any situation in which it is reasonably foreseeable that providing the requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury. It also includes all support to civilian law enforcement officials in situations where confrontation between civilian law enforcement and civilian individuals or groups is reasonably anticipated. Such use of force must be in accordance with DoD 5210.56, which you can look at that on your own. Potentially is further restricted based on the specifics of the requested support. So here what they're doing is they're outlining intelligence support for law enforcement. They should not be doing that. Okay, I think it's a clear violation of Posse Comitatus Act. When we teach our recruits in the academy about Posse Comitatus, we tell them all active duty troops are to be left alone. So as an example, I've used Posse Comitatus as a patrol officer twice in my career. Once, a group of officers were chasing a stolen car. The suspect foot bailed. They all ran on foot up this rural hillside with about 10 cops chasing them. And I went up to a nearby rancher and said, hey, do you have a quad? And he says, I do. Do you want it? Yes, I would love to use it to go chase that felon. And so he gave me his quad, and I passed all the officers, and then we took the suspect into custody. That's Posse Comitatus. It is me going to a civilian and just saying, hey, I need your help. I used it another time and another foot chase where I was chasing a guy. Actually, I used it 3 times where a citizen, as we were running by, the suspect was so far ahead at a stop sign was a car. I'm like, hey, give me a ride, catch up to that guy. And he gave me a ride, floored it, and I jumped out of the car, took him into custody. And a third time, I on-viewed a violent crime. I had 2 people at gunpoint. One was not cooperative, and you could hear the other cops coming to help me. And a truck driver pulls up. He goes, officer, would you like help? Yes, I would like your help. Come down. If that guy gets up, start beating the crap out of him. And he's like, yeah, and he jumps into it. That's Posse Comitatus. If it was an active duty troop that rolled up and said, officer, do you need help? I would say no, because I'm not allowed to use them. It's specifically by code, we can't use them. Now, National Guard, different subject. I've worked with National Guard on counter drug operations, but they're on state active duty orders. They are employed by the state. They are in the National Guard. They are not active duty. It's a different title. To use the military for intelligence in civilian law enforcement, I think really breaks that Posse Comitatus Act. So let's look at the Posse Comitatus Act. Here is 18 United States Code 1385. Here it says, whoever, except in cases under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or Act of Congress, willfully uses any part of the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, or the Space Force as Posse Comitatus or otherwise to execute the laws shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 2 years or both. So when you look at this, using them for intelligence, we'll go into why this is later. But I personally feel like cops are taught from the get-go, active duty troops are off limits. National Guard, totally cool. In fact, many riots in California, we've called out the National Guard and we have them do extra duties for us, like not so much crowd control, but more like blocking intersections and guarding infrastructure and stuff like that. So let's go back to this part that concerns everybody. It doesn't tell, a lot of YouTubers are out there saying, it authorizes the government to come out and they're making it sound like the military is going to come out and just start slaughtering people right now. Well, they're opening up the door for them to violate the Posse Comitatus Act, which they're laying the groundwork for that. And that there's a lot of broad definitions in this thing right here. And this is legally binding for anybody in the military. Anybody in the military has to abide by this directive. Okay, so the document's language on assisting law enforcement and providing intelligence leaves room for interpretation, which could lead to military overreach in civilian law enforcement activities. That bothers me a lot. And then there's intelligence sharing risks. This all started because they wanted to share intelligence and to use military intelligence. Intelligence support to law enforcement is going to blur the lines between military and civilian operations, and it's going to raise privacy and civil liberties concerns. This freaks me out a little bit. So this whole thing that we're looking at right here, this is the one paragraph that concerns us. Actually, the whole thing concerns me. That use of force is what everybody's freaking out about. You should be freaked out about this whole directive. It's directing our military intelligence apparatus to help law enforcement. There are going to be law enforcement agencies like the FBI, ATF, and other groups that are going to use this military intelligence for wrong. You're not going to see your local cops working with the military on intelligence issues. This is straight up set up for federal law enforcement agencies to use, and you should be concerned about it. You should be calling your congressman and your senator right now. So the other thing besides lethal force that's in here is now we're going to have military intelligence apparatus at the disposal of the FBI. Does that make you feel good? It doesn't make me feel good. Trust God, not government. Okay. Now look, this is